Hi, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. Thank you for joining me. The U.S. Census Bureau is conducting a $1.2 million experiment to measure the impact of the pandemic on American households. Officials began rolling out the Household Pulse Survey in late April. Participants are asked about stay-at-home orders and social distancing restrictions. Census officials say that early findings have left them, quote, very surprised. For more, let's bring in Hansi Lo Wang. He's a national correspondent for NPR. Hansi, thank you for being here. So first of all, what stood out to officials in this first batch of results?
Well, you have nearly half of households, 47% surveyed, reporting that their households, that they or either someone in their household lost income from work, and they're expecting the households that were surveyed, about 74,000. Nearly half of them also expect to lose income from work over the next 4 months.
And these results also shined a light on how the coronavirus crisis is impacting people's health. What did the Bureau find?
Well, there were some really interesting questions about mental health. And the Household Pulse Survey asked whether people were feeling anxious or on edge, and it found that close to 6 out of 10 people, adults, reported that they did feel anxious on edge for several days or more during the week they were surveyed. And you also have about half of adults surveyed saying that they couldn't stop or control their worrying for several days or more. And so it's really interesting, some insight into how folks are dealing with these orders to stay at home if you can, to shelter in place. And if you've been feeling really anxious at home, this survey is telling us you're not alone.
Absolutely. That anxiety is widespread, not just among Americans, but across the globe. More than 74,000 households were surveyed in this first round. What other questions are Americans being asked?
There's some questions about food security, whether people are getting enough food to eat, the kinds of food that they need. There are also questions about if people feel confident that they can make rent payments, mortgage payments, and certainly we are just over a week until the first of the month coming up, so that's certainly on a lot of people's minds. And this is a survey that will continue through mid-July. The Census Bureau is going to try to reach a total of 14 million households. They're not expecting everyone to respond. They're sending out emails, they're sending out text messages, and we'll see over the next few weeks more results coming in and be able to spot any trends based on how people respond over the next few weeks.
Wow, that really is something. So given those tremendous numbers that they're anticipating, what exactly are officials hoping to accomplish? And give us also a little bit of a reality check on this, Hansi. How unusual is this Household Pulse Survey?
This is very unusual. It's a brand new survey. It's really an experimental survey. The Census Bureau has not done this before. It's partnered up with multiple federal agencies, including Housing and Urban Development, Bureau of Labor Statistics, other agencies, to try to come up with a set of questions to really gauge where the country, where households are in this really incredible moment that we're living through. And these are questions that hopefully will generate data, the Census Bureau says, that will inform not only the public, but also policymakers, so they can better understand exactly what's happening in people's homes around the country, if there are any regional differences state by state, in order to help us figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, not unusual to have this type of survey done, but certainly different to have it done by the federal government as part of the U.S. Census. So let's talk about the big census, the 2020 census. Last month, the Census Bureau asked Congress to extend the deadline to turn over data on voting districts and House seats. Tell us more about why it requested that delay and where the Bureau stands with this year's census.
Well, just to be very clear, the Household Pulse Survey that we were talking about, that is not part of the 2020 census. It's a voluntary survey. Right. The 2020 census is mandatory. Like you said, it's help us generate the data needed to redistribute the congressional seats, electoral college votes among the states. And that data, the Census Bureau says they're not confident that they can collect that information to do a complete count of every person living in the country in time in order to deliver it by the deadline, which currently legally speaking, the legal deadline is December 31st. That is when the Census Bureau has to deliver to the president the latest state population counts. The Census Bureau says, given all the delays in its field operations that are slowly coming back online right now, all those delays and all the disruptions in outreach, that has really hampered their efforts, and they're really concerned that they won't be able to get a complete count of every person living in the country in time to deliver it by December 31st. So it's asked for a 4-month extension.
And before the coronavirus pandemic was the topic on everybody's lips, I remember a time when we were discussing really that big 2020 census and wondered about immigrant participation, non-English speakers, and there were some very real concerns. Can you tell us anything more about that, Hansi?
Sure. Well, that's certainly a big concern right now, that you have the self-response rate nationally is close to 60%. But if you look closer, the big concern right now is that historically undercounted groups, communities of color, immigrants, rural residents, that they may not be fully counted and are not responding at the rates as close to the national average. And the big concern there is that if we do not have a complete count of every person living in the country, that is going to have a long-term effect on not only local representation over the next decade, but also the distribution of federal funding. $1.5 trillion a year in federal funds is distributed based on those census numbers. And so the Census Bureau and community activists are really trying to encourage every person to participate and trying to overcome people's concerns and trust issues with the federal government.
Absolutely. A good reminder to anybody who has not already filled out their 2020 census to do so. Hansi Lo Wang, thank you.
You're welcome.